everyone, and welcome to an exciting episode of Blockchain Business. I'm your host, Dr. Ravi Chamria, CEO of Zeeve. This show is where we bring you conversations with leaders who are shaping the Web3 landscape, whether it be startups who are building in the enterprise space, or whether it be global companies who are driving massive adoption. And today, I couldn't have asked for a better guest to kick things off. Joining me is David Palmer, who is the head of blockchain at Vodafone and Pairpoint. He's also an esteemed keynote speaker at various events. He's also an author of a book called The Business of Metaverse. So, hi, David. Welcome on the show. And before we get into the topic, we would love you to introduce yourself. Tell us about your Web3 journey so far.
Ravi, first of all, thanks for having me on this wonderful show. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, yes, so David Palmer, I've been really looking at the telco blockchain journey for Vodafone for the last 8 years, along with others, in the organization, looking at how, telecoms and blockchain can work together, looking at the use cases that would be appropriate, and the culmination of that, in 2020 was a platform which we called the Digital Asset Broker, which is a platform which links IoT, it links blockchain, and it links digital identity as well across both of them. And that is what we now call. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for that and a co-founder. And I believe it's one of the biggest platforms of its kind.
No, absolutely. I think Digital Asset Broker Consortium is definitely one of the most innovative. It was launched almost 5 years back, which has been a long time. And I think very cutting edge, well ahead of time. And it's always lovely to meet with you in person as well as online, David. So, David, before we get into the future, let's start with where we are today. So, can you give us a snapshot of where telecom industry stands today in terms of Web3 adoption?
Yeah, so the industry today is, I mean, there is some adoption happening. So I think if you look at the industry today, blockchain is there really where you have elements of the telco infrastructure that don't trust each other. So things like roaming, contract management, IoT, where you have sort of devices that are in silos, and to create a market, they need to trust each other to transact. So those are the sorts of use cases that we're seeing. There is some limited involvement of telcos, in node validation. So this is where the telcos will validate nodes for Web3 protocols. And there are, of course, some exciting use cases that we're starting to look at in this field.
Got it. And in terms of, like you mentioned, some initiatives like Digital Asset Broker Initiative and then few other initiatives. So how have Vodafone and Pairpoint, your approach to blockchain so far?
So Vodafone Pairpoint, we've taken a cautious approach, but I believe an innovative approach to blockchain. And look, we're building a new digital infrastructure for a new digital world. That is where we are. And what we're trying to do is look at how we can combine phone numbers, how we can combine the KYC we do for phone numbers and the infrastructure behind cell towers with things like blockchain and blockchain digital identity, things like WC3 and verifiable credentials and CK proofs, and how you can combine these things to really build this new digital infrastructure for a new digital world. And now, of course, the focus is on AI. So a lot of what we're looking at is, how the telco infrastructure, the IoT infrastructure, the blockchain infrastructure, can play a part in AI. Anything from data center, provision to identity to agent to authentication using phone number identification. These are some of the things that we're exploring.
Got it. No, I think you have covered quite a lot of ground, starting from digital identity to, as you mentioned, IoT is, of course, one key area. Then RWA, the whole real world asset tokenization is picking up big time. And I think we had a discussion, where in the telecom space specifically, people are talking about whether it be tokenizing spectrum, network bandwidth, or the network infrastructure. So I think there are quite a few open areas. And it's very exciting to see the kind of initiatives. And I think you are leading the bandwagon. I don't see much happening in the overall industry, but I think Vodafone and your initiatives can be torchbearers for some of those use cases, I would say. So you've rightly mentioned some of the use cases. Now, if we let's say one thing that we have seen in 2025 is that there is a lot of there is an increase in adoption as far as enterprises are concerned. And rightly, stable coins or RWA in general, then deepen use cases and various other use cases. So from your perspective, if we are looking in 2025 and looking beyond 2025, what are some of the major initiatives or transformations that we can expect in telecom and Web3 space?
It's difficult. I think the headline is obviously AI, right? AI processing, agentic AI frameworks, AI for use internally, and then how the telco infrastructure, things like phone numbers, authentication, connectivity, encryption, can be used to secure and enhance and build and grow AI. And a part of that is will also involve blockchain, right? Because blockchain, if you think of things like agents, for example, agentic frameworks and agents are middleware, but you still need trust, right? So if an agent's going to buy something on your behalf as a company or as an individual, how can we be sure that that agent is your agent? How can we authenticate that agent? How can we secure the data that the agent's activating or generating? And of course, the agent needs to be connected, right? Whether the agent's working for you online or whether the agent's working for you in the future through physical AI, i.e., a humanoid robot or even your phone. For that, we believe that the telco infrastructure, is pretty important, right? Because the phone number is there, and if I can link my phone number to an AI agent, then you can also link that agent and its actions to me, right? Which means you have an entity, a recourse for legal relations, a means to authenticate. So we believe that there's a lot of inherent advantages in the telco infrastructure, which can be used.
No, I think I absolutely agree with this. And what you just described about how Web3 can be used in AI, specifically for AI agents, is very similar to what I understand about Web3 being used for IoT devices, right? As an authentication layer, ensuring that if IoT device is doing an action on behalf of the user, there's a clear authentication, there's a clear access layer. And I think same applies for AI agents. As you rightly said, it's not just about authentication, but beyond authentication, we believe that in future, in next few years, we are going to see where AI agents are going to act on behalf of the users. And their right authentication, proper access control, synergies among the different AI agents to do multi-step processes, etc., I think will play a key role. And I believe that Web3 will form a trustless infrastructure to power the AI. We have seen protocols like Near protocol, etc., are focusing solely on some of these challenges with AI today in terms of large-scale adoption.
Yeah,
No, I think that's absolutely. I see that AI and Web3 coming together leads to a lot of use cases and much larger adoption overall.
yeah. I
So
mean,
in terms, yeah,
you did mention stablecoins and real world asset tokenization, and that is a hot stream in for mainstream Web3 blockchain. Is the Genius Act passing in the US,
right.
which is really driving forward stablecoins and a lot of real world asset tokenization, a drive to put everything from equity, shares, commodities, other financial products on chain and tokenize it. And I think this will be massive, for the financial industry. Will it approach telecoms? I don't think so yet. I think stablecoins are interesting because they're peer to peer, and they could be interesting where you have high volume, low value transactions. But at the moment, you still need to cash in and out, right? You need to on ramp and off ramp, and that's the
Right.
step where the benefits aren't so clear yet. But I think stablecoins could be something of interest in the future.
No, absolutely. I think that's one of the most compelling use case and the kind of adoption and the traction stablecoins are seeing, whether it be individual organizations or banks are now launching their own stablecoins. It may be used for, interbank transfers within the bank, inter-department transfers or inter-branch transfers. I think there are a plethora of use cases beyond general large international use cases. So yeah, stablecoin, and then we have few partners who are working in commodity tokenization, which I believe is again a very exciting space. Apart from carbon credits, like non-financial assets. So I see carbon credits in the sustainability area, and whether it be carbon accounting and so on and so forth. And the other area we are seeing is commodities, especially critical minerals and some of the other commodities, which again, I think there are a lot of challenges which blockchain-based tokenization can solve. So I think we have talked about quite a few of these use cases, and the good thing is The discussion we used to have 5 years back, 6 years back, vis-a-vis today, we are actually seeing some adoption happening for some of those use cases. So overall, as we have seen the adoption, from POC pilots to production rollouts, we have seen a long time. And I think that's understandable. Enterprises have legacy systems and their government regulations, data compliances. So what are the challenges from telecom industry standpoint that stands in the way of adoption, or it slows down the adoption, whether it be regulation, infrastructure, or interoperability or compliances?
So I think the number one in the past was regulation, right? Lack of clarity on regulation. I think that is now changing with the big push for regulation and clarity on regulation coming out of the US. But that was a big barrier before. I think the other sort of barrier to adoption is what are we adopting, right? So things like stable coins essentially are applications, right? They're products, but you need a use case. Yeah, what is the use case, for stable coins and telco? And that's where we need to whack. Because I think that one of the things that the Web3 blockchain community have not been so good at is about talking about the use case and the business benefit, right? We talk a lot about technology. Okay, we can have a smart contract, we can have fast finality, we can have fast TPS, we can have cross-chain capabilities, and that's all fine. But why do I need it, right? What problem is it going to solve? And I think this is what's critical, to get adoption. It's going to be, phrasing and packaging all of the wonderful things that Web3 can do in a business plan and a business value and a business benefits package, so that the case for it is clear. I mean, something like roaming, for example, it's clear that if you have a blockchain involved, that you can cut out your costs, right, and improve efficiency. But other use cases, where you're using it, RWA could be useful to bring liquidity, right? Bring new financing and liquidity to telcos. Things like phone number digital identity could be great, for a new business where we can extend from connectivity to identity. But that's the sort of language we need to start talking, to get adoption. And I think the lack of that and the focus on sort of technical features is probably why we haven't, got the adoption we could have.
No, absolutely. I think I absolutely agree. I started my journey working with the enterprises, initially supply chain track and trace. So we understood, there were some established use cases. Some of the use cases took a bit of time, like supply chain, I think, has finally come off. And one is the cost, cost of doing. Sometimes cost economics don't work while implementing a use case. Sometimes, as you rightly said, the use case has not been thrashed out properly. And, you may be just moving around circles and seeing how we can implement the emerging tech, but there is no real utility which the organization is getting. It either needs to be transformative or at least incremental, right? So some kind of innovation or value addition that should happen. So no, absolutely. And I think now we are seeing some good use cases and we are seeing a focus. I think, as you said, that Web3 has not been focusing so far, but now we are seeing focus even from public protocols. We are seeing a larger focus on the enterprise space, see what use cases can actually bring in tremendous value. And then, of course, the whole Web3 ecosystem will get the value in return if you provide value and bring in more and more enterprises into the Web3. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
perfect.
So,
Yeah.
so from David, from telecom perspective, what do you see telecom's role in the enterprise Web3 ecosystem as enablers, as infra providers, as service builders?
Really good question. So our strategy is really, to have relationships with protocols that we want to build stuff with, right? Where there's synergies, where the ecosystems align strategically. So I think that, one role is to become validators, because with telcos are very good at managing infrastructure and critical infrastructure. So as we build this new digital infrastructure for a new digital world, telcos have that experience with trusted, and there is a role there. But I believe we should only do that with protocols that we're going to work with, right? So I believe that validation, is one role, but I believe that other roles where we start linking the telco infrastructure with the blockchain infrastructure. So if you think about consensus protocols, I've always thought, why can't we do consensus on a mobile, right? On a mobile phone, which I think is absolutely critical, to speed. If you think about identity, digital identity, decentralized, self-sovereign digital identity, whichever approach we take. We have a phone number. That phone number, you can port around. It belongs to you, right? You can port your phone number from different carriers to different carriers, but it's an identity. And for postpaid customers, we've done a KYC and sometimes even a credit check. Why can we not leverage that where we need to send a stable coin from one person to another, and we can leverage the KYC there, or if we need to identify agents or ourselves or our mobiles. I believe that digital identity of the phone number is widespread, is global, and could be there. So those are some of the use cases I'm seeing going forwards where I believe telcos can start to play a role. But I think all of this is, as I said before, needs to be framed in business solutions, right? Business benefits and business use cases.
No, absolutely. I think that's very insightful. In fact, as you rightly said, like we have UPI in India, which is connected to your phone and you can make payments. Similarly, we have the concept of, a claim registry where you can put in your claims, mobile number authentication being one claim, and then your email and your social logins. And you can put a claims into a smart contract and that can create an identity. And the best part is that identity will be portable. So we have
Yes.
digital identity platforms, we have decentralized self-sovereign identity also, but I think yes, adoption is still a bit of challenge. But I see a lot of DeFi use cases now coming in where they are bringing real world credit scoring into blockchain and the other way around as well. So as Web 2 and Web 3 start talking to each other more and more, I think some of the use cases which were seen as very weak or providing little value can become viable, commercially viable as well as transformative. Nope, I think very interesting to know about this. So, David, apart from work at Vodafone and Pairpoint, you have also authored the book, The Business of Metaverse, and I'm fortunate to get a copy of it from you in person. So what inspired you to write it, and how do you see its ideas connecting with telecom and Web3?
Yeah, so the business of the metaverse is really talking about this shift to AI on online, facilitated by Web3 that's happening. And if you look at some of the statistics, they're absolutely huge for humanoid robots and online working and online retail, online consuming entertainment online. It's growing. A lot of this was accelerated by COVID and the subsequent lockdowns around the world, where there was even more pressure to make sure that we could work online, collaborate online, and do things that we couldn't do physically. Obviously, COVID's now gone and the lockdowns have gone, but the principles of and benefits of the metaverse, virtual, immersive, online, are still there, right? And some of those, I saw something this morning that Stanford University are giving away online education for free. Why? Because where you can do immersive courses, right, as if you're there, using metaverse immersive technologies. It removes the need for geography. And if you remove the need for geography and the marginal cost of providing a course to 10 people who don't physically need to go to campus, or 1,000 people is near zero, then what does it do? It lowers the cost and increases the quantity supply. So if you're talking about something like education, the benefits of something like the metaverse removing geography, is absolutely massive. But when you start to combine it with AI, we moved to agentic frameworks and agents frameworks. We're moving from the mobile phone architecture, to the agent architecture, which will come over the next 5-10 years, which means that we're not going to initiate everything from our phone. There's going to be a lot of proactiveness, a lot of agents doing things on our behalf, us talking to it. But how are we going to interact, right? The AI needs a body, right? It needs an environment, and that is going to be the metaverse. And if you look at industries where you have high level of benefit from immersiveness and benefit from removing geography, these are the sorts of industries like education, infotainment, etc., which will be revolutionized by this technology, as well as working and businesses and collaboration. All of these things, the creator economy, are going to be absolutely transformed. And what it does, it makes the world smaller, but also it can redefine the boundaries of opportunity, because it means that essentially a Harvard education meant I had to go to the US and I had to pay fees and accommodation to go there. With the metaverse, I don't need that, right? I can put on a pair of glasses and participate as if I'm in a classroom. And what does that mean? It means the cost is lower, the access is broader, so the quality of education and opportunity is improving. And in the same way, for some jobs I had to travel, right? Okay, there is a lot of home working since COVID, but for some collaborative jobs, right, immersive collaborative jobs, you needed to be there on site in a team. But as the virtual reality, augmented reality technologies, and the low latency communication gets more powerful, maybe I don't, right? And if I don't, what it means is I could be anywhere in the world and work in a virtual team for a virtual business, using that technology. Of course, critical to that is going to be low latency, fast communication, right? Connectivity. All of this stuff needs connectivity. But also critical to will be the applications, right? Which will provide environments and ways of working and collaborating with each other in virtual locations, which I think we're only starting to see the tip of what this could be.
No, I think the concept and the promise of metaverse is absolutely fascinating. And as you described, some of the areas where we are going to see metaverse will be massively transformative,
Believe
and we
so.
are going to see a massive economy. But as you rightly said at the end, that it does require a solid infrastructure, it does require user experiences to be built, and that's why we have not been able to see the promise, which was it was a massive bubble about metaverse 4 5 years back, post COVID. But necessary ecosystem components need to be there for any tech to succeed. But absolutely, this is definitely a very well established concept. In fact, I came across a series recently called Uploads. Again, a very interesting concept where the human consciousness is it's more of a futuristic where the consciousness is taken after death of a person, and still the person lives on in a metaverse. So there's
Ah,
and
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, this is one of the things in the book, right? When I locked myself away writing this, and you realize that the metaverse can bring people back to life, right? It can change the way we view and interact with history. But
right.
actually, now that my thoughts and my views, are being shared on social media and recorded on a level that it hasn't before. Actually, there's a lot of data on me, right? So you combine my historical data with an AI algorithm which would allow that to interact and have views for future. Then you have this famous thing of Steve Jobs being asked about the metaverse or AI and what he thought. But because there's so much views on how we've reacted in the past, an AI algorithm could allow our personalities and those views to interact in the future, which actually means that family members don't need to die in the digital world, right? You can bring people back to life, but also you can stay alive, right? Because your personality can become an algorithm potentially, and you can be there for your family, friends, and others to interact with, which I think is powerful. But these are all things that are possible,
Right.
in the future.
No, absolutely. And absolutely fascinating and exciting as well. So, David, before we wrap up, let's do something fun, a rapid fire round. I'll throw a few quick questions, and you can answer in one line or just a few words. Just, 3 4 questions. One Web3 use case in telecom that you are bullish on.
Roaming,
If you had to explain Web3 in one word to a CEO, what it would be?
automated trust.
And one innovator or organization in Web3 worth following right now.
I like this Ethereum.
A book besides your own you would recommend to business leaders who are exploring Web3 and AI.
That's a different. I mean, there's so many. There's so many books. I would say just read the top 10 on Amazon. Right, they're all.
Got it.
That's what I'm doing. They're all good, and the information is changing so much.
And one last, outside telecom, which industry excites you the most for Web3 disruption?
Finance, fintech.
Absolutely. I think I absolutely agree with that. Finance is already getting disrupted. I think DeFi is finally catching up with stablecoin coming into picture and rest of the other use cases. I think things are catching up big time in finance. And I think there's
Yes,
it's a digital asset already. It's easier. We have legacy systems, so there's a lot to be disrupt, a lot of incentive to disrupt, So I absolutely agree with that. So
and
David, yeah,
I
please.
was just going to say, if you think about it, right, what is a share? A share is a way of representing ownership in a company, right? I buy shares
Right.
in a company. What is derivative, right? It's a future ownership of an asset or a commodity. What is a bond, right? It's essentially buying government debt. But all of these things are a package of ownership, right? Of an asset of some kind. And tokenization and the ability to fractionalize and program these assets, using Web3 blockchain technology, smart contracts, have the ability to take these products further, right, and make them more inclusive, which I think is exciting, and that's what we're starting to see. Right?
No, absolutely. So, David, this was a fantastic conversation. I think we covered how telecom is approaching Web3 today, learned your experiences at Vodafone and Pairpoint, and your unique perspective both as an industry leader, as an author, as a speaker. And thanks a lot for joining us. And for our listeners, don't forget to check out David's book, The Business of Metaverse, how organizations are optimizing the opportunities in Web3 and AI. And do follow him on LinkedIn. He is a keynote speaker in many events and conferences across the globe, whether it be Web3 or AI. I think you'll get to learn a lot from him. I think this is, I would say, a small masterclass this session. And thanks a lot, David, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ravi. My pleasure.
And thanks everyone for listening. This was our first episode of the Enterprise series of Blogs in Business. And if you enjoyed the discussion, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We have many more conversations with leaders driving enterprise Web3 adoption coming up. Until next time, this is Dr. Ravi Chamria signing off. Thanks a lot. Keep building, keep smiling.